How much does a Dark Victory YouTube animation video cost? We'll find out today because I'm giving you exclusive insights into my numbers, my studio, and the making of How I Met My Boyfriend Part 3 as a case study. What are the steps? Which steps take how long? And how much does all the fun cost in the end? The answer to these questions comes now. So how do we actually calculate all this? First of all, it's important to know how much 1 hour of work at my studio actually costs. We can then use this to make a practical extrapolation of the hours invested and how much each individual section costs. At the end, we have a big number which tells us how much the final video cost. We are a small team of 5 people at Dark Victory Studios. Having employees also means paying income tax, insurance, salary, financial accounting, payroll accounting. All of this adds up to a monthly personnel cost of €20,000. Also, I have 2 mini jobbers on a €500 basis, 1 person for marketing and 1 for social media support, editing, etc. A €500 base actually means a €520 base, and there are also minor contributions that I have to pay. That's €360, another $1,400 in total on top of the $20,000. Furthermore, we have to find somewhere to stay with all these people. The office costs rent, water, utilities, waste is generated, you need your own garbage can, toilet paper, tea. We don't have coffee, we all hate coffee. Seriously, if you like coffee, you can't come to our office. It's hiring criteria. Technical equipment that is needed, something's always breaking and needs replaced. This unit is €3,000 on top per month. But in order to work on the technology, the PCs and stuff, you need according software. This means that license fees are incurred for Adobe Creative Cloud for each workstation, Toon Boom, our animation software, Microsoft Office, various databases that we have to pay monthly for music, sound effects, license fees for trademark usage, like the name Tube Clash, Dark Victory, you name it. We also need external freelancers from time to time who create backgrounds for us, 3D stuff, or compose music. And that's another $1.5K. This means we have €26,000 in expenses every month that we somehow have to make back in order to get to zero. From here, let's calculate our hourly value. We divide €26,000 by 5 workers, all who work 32 hours on average. There are 4 people who work 30 hours, I work 40 hours, but the average goes to 32. This results in an hourly rate of €40 that each person costs per hour in order to get back to the €26,000. Does that make sense? I hope so. And if it doesn't, I don't care, because we only need this number to continue the calculation, €40 an hour. Now, I have already announced that we will use the How I Met My Boyfriend Part 3 video as an example, because it was the longest part so far, and I believe it's a good indication of that. It is also an in-house project and not a commission project from an external source, because that involves completely different costs like commission music or external illustrators or 3D artists. Everything we do in-house on YouTube is even more cost-effective. At the beginning of this project, we started with the idea and the research for the co-story series, the How I Met My Boyfriend, and it took an incredible amount of time. We had to go through old Facebook chats, WhatsApp histories, MSN, ICQ, you name it. Searching through hard disks, comparing photos and data. Proper detective work, you know? It took the team a whole week's worth of work to collect everything and put it together in a usable table. 1 week means, as previously mentioned, 32 hours on average at €40 each. This combined makes a total of €1,280 just to gather this bulk of information. And that doesn't include the hours that I spend annoying Dennis and friends for their time. That was just a freebie though. After the research, the script comes next. For this specific video, it's super helpful that we time rack everything we do. That means everyone types in on their PC when they're working, what they're working on, and how much time they need for it. And yeah, that was incredibly helpful to make this video. It also helped to realize what eats up the most time, as time equals money, and how do we find the sweet spot so that the next part perhaps makes a little more sense. At the very beginning, I start by making a list of key points about what I want to have in the video, what the order will be, who says what and when, often it already includes jokes between Mick and Auntie. After that, I use a microboard to try to squeeze it visually into a dramaturgy, and it is not that easy to dramatize your own life and stories so that they can work together as an entertaining video. Also, finding the balance between drama and comedy, yeah. The whole thing took us 18.5 hours according to my Clockify tracker. This corresponds to €40 hourly costs, so €740 for the script. Now for the takes. That's what I'm doing right now, standing in the booth and recording. The longer the video is, the more time it takes, of course. Part 3 was the longest video so far at 17 minutes, and thank God we have a recording studio at our own animation studio, so that means that the rental costs are eliminated. Which is nonsense actually, because we still had to build it anyway, and that still costs an assload of money, and I have to recoup it somehow. But let's just ignore that here. 11.5 hours are on the clock, which is not just me, but also the time that Costas, or Dennis, was in the recording studio to make his takes. That equates to €460, including editing, effects like reverb and so on, the whole mastering. And one more request, folks, please don't use this figure as a comparison for voice actors or voiceover jobs because external voice actors would actually be paid significantly higher, several €100. But for the sake of simplicity, let's just stick with the €40 per hour in order to not blow up the calculation. So far we have €24.80 on the clock. For my team to get started, you need a storyboard, and depending on time and importance, it's either me or a compositor from the team, at least for the rig animations. And for that, I already write a lot of notes directly into the script, especially because the hand-drawn animations are also made directly by the person who will later draw the final hand-drawn animations. And this is not the same person who composited the rig stuff. All in all, for the storyboard process, we end up at 32 hours, €1,280. Ka-ching! The storyboard and the hand-drawn animations practically merge into one another because they're now getting more detailed step by step, and then I get them back for review and approval. After that, I scribble my corrections on there and provide my input, and yeah, everything is worked out and finalized. This entire process took 77 hours for part 3 of How I Met My Boyfriend. That's €3,080. But hey, look at those great animations, it's worth it! Okay, we're almost at 7K now, but the most elaborate part is just around the corner. The rig animations. I'm throwing around terms all the time, but let me explain them. There are two forms of animation: hand-drawn animations and rig animations. There are of course others, but those aren't important right now. Actual hand-drawn animations are super elaborate. A good example of this is Disney, anime, Ghibli, or Has Been Hotel, in which 12 or 24 frames are drawn by hand per second, each frame a new one. This is not affordable for YouTube, but hey, look how I'm moving right now! Woo! Woo! I'm practically just moving every couple of seconds. This makes the whole production faster and therefore cheaper, because time is money, you know it. Rig animations, on the other hand, are things like Rick and Morty. Basically every recent TV animation, where you have dolls that are built digitally at the beginning, and then are animated all the way through. Mouth selected, movement, we use them to make me chill on the couch with Auntie. And for all those studio scenes are for the emotional and important ones. That's the part that takes an incredibly long amount of time, where most of the team is involved and which eats up the most time. How I Met My Boyfriend Part 3 was 17 minutes long, and the whole video has a relatively large portion of rig animations. You can take a look through it. It took us a total of 589 hours divided by an 8-hour day. This means 73.5 days divided by 3 main animators equals 25 days for a 4-day week, more than 6 weeks worth of work just for this part! Now somebody ask again why these parts take so long? These almost 600 hours cost us €23,580. And we're not finished yet. Everything has now been animated individually, 700s of thousands of single frames buzzing on our server, which have to be put together with effects, backgrounds. This is called compositing. The virtual camera is also inserted here, and the finished image is created. And all this for How I Met My Boyfriend Part 3 in about 10 days, 82 hours, at a cost of €3,280. And just before the end, we have to choose SFX, i.e. sound effects, and music to make the whole thing come to life. We are often working in parallel with a team of 3. As I said, this is often more expensive for external projects because new music has to be composed. This can cost up to several €1,000. This has happened with Tube Clash, Broadcast My Ass, Schreib mich ab. For our YouTube productions, we often use stock music, which is already included in the license cost of $40 per hour. The longer the video, the longer the entire run. Also for camera zooms, comic SFX, organic SFX, music, mixing the whole volume afterwards, you name it. That was 45 hours. €1,800 on top. As you can see, we're approaching the end, but we're still missing a thumbnail. I usually make several sketches for this, and together with the team, we brainstorm various title ideas that have to work in combination with the thumbnail. The thumbnail on which we agree will then be worked out. All of this in 3 hours. Usually it would take even longer. This time it went relatively quickly, €120. Uploading, writing the description, cross-linking, getting the whole video ready. These are tasks that often fall behind and are forgotten, but even that usually costs another hour. And the community management in order to check the questions are being answered, the comment section is moderated, and the data is analyzed afterwards, all of that eats up another 2 to 3 hours. Which brings us to our final prize. How I Met My Boyfriend Part 3 costs €35,780. Let that sink in. What could you do with €35,780? producing this video, telling you a queer story. We need to get it all back in first in order to get to 0 and not go into the red and make a loss. So, let's see, what did this video generate in AdSense revenue? €121.12. But then how can we even afford all this? More info on that in a moment, but first a brief explanation. Why is it so little money? On YouTube, customers pay the least when they want to advertise on queer content advertising. For us, it's an average of €4.50 for 1,000 views. This is determined by YouTube and is not in our control. I did a bit of research on Reddit, and the post is 2 years old, but on the partner YouTube Reddit, other niche channels showed me what they earn per 1,000 contacts. And yeah, that shit is fucking depressing. Especially because our videos are demonetized directly when we upload them, and only on day 5 or 6 after we say check this again, they get monetized. By that time, most of the views were gone. The same happened with Co-Story Part 3. However, thanks to your super thanks, i.e. your willingness to donate, we were able to make €709.63 with the video. A huge thank you. This means your donations were almost 6 times as much as the YouTube AdSense revenue. But compared to the $36,000 production costs, it's still not really profitable. The fact is, this entire YouTube channel here is tearing a huge hole in our pockets. How can we even finance this? We're trying to land jobs. That's actually very difficult when it's not Pride Month and you're a gay creator, and when you do animation and can't hold products into the camera. Many customers forget that we have much cooler options and possibilities to advertise their products. It's animation, guys, anything is possible. But the bottom line is that we need big commission projects to keep us alive. And the whole profit from these projects is reinvested back into our YouTube channel in order to do what we're passionate about. Streaming income also flows into the pot, like from Tube Clash music, for example, which to this day a lot of people still listen to. AdSense revenue from all YouTube channels that we run, but which also cost money for editing and administration. Yet another zero calculation. You see, this is definitely not a concept for getting rich, and I know how I could do that. Pay less, cheaper animations, skipping out on my passions that don't make any money, and accepting whatever comes along. Basically, selling my soul. But as you know me, that would just feel so wrong. If there's no space to make fairly paid queer content, then I'd rather not make it at all. Then the Dark Victory Studios experiment may have simply hit the wall. That would be a shame, because I think this channel here is important. Many of you have written that these stories help you, and that really makes me happy, because my goal is to show that queer struggles are common and normal, but nobody is willing to pay this much money in order to create this kind of content for us. And yet I've been struggling since Tube Clash, trying to somehow manage this production. Yes, animation is expensive, but it's also a medium that inspires like no other in my opinion, and that can bring fantasies to life. That's why we're starting our own Patreon, hoping that many of you together can make this small but extremely cost-intensive machine run a bit more stable by contributing a little. But why now? Well, because we have something new and big in the pipeline, something queer in the field of animation that has never existed before. But in order to be brave and move on to the next big project, we need a strong backbone. Because at the moment, we are running from one paid production to the next so that we don't drown. This means we can't take the time we need to A, continue the story here, and B, develop new materials and push the boundaries. Oh my god, that sounds so pompous. What was I thinking when I wrote the script? This is definitely the first step, and one of the most honest videos where I let you take a complete look at my cards. I hope you can understand how much work goes into these videos now, why they take so long, and why it's getting harder and harder for us to produce this high-quality content without Netflix, Amazon, or other financial backers behind us. So if you like my content and want to support me, my team, and the queer arts no matter how small the contribution, feel free to check out our new Patreon where you'll find behind-the-scenes insights in the future, storyboards, scripts, and maybe even a masterclass. Until then, you know it. Chew-wah!
Oh, finally! I thought he'd never shut up.